Elder Lives Matter Society presents the ELMS podcast with your hosts, Paul Cassella and George Dewey.
And welcome to our first installment of Elder Lives Matter Society, ELMS, we call it. I'm Paul Cassella. I am an aging adult advocate with my good friend George Dewey. How are you, George?
I'm doing well.
You are doing well. You look awfully sharp today. Too bad this isn't for television. You look great. Nice suit.
Thank you.
So, George and I have decided that we have been working with the elderly. I've been working with the elderly for my whole life because my parents are 97 and 93 years old. And I've been through a lot with them in the past 10 years. And George is a specialist in, I don't know, George, you're an expert in assisted living, which is some challenges that we always have as, what we're trying to do here is we know a lot of you listening out there are, and that's the sandwich generation, this whole baby boomer thing, correct?
Absolutely.
So, and everybody's living to be much older than anybody ever expected. Now, my dad is 97. My mom is 93. And if we go back just about 20, 25 years, I remember sitting around the living room with my dad and my aunts, and they'd be reading the paper, the newspaper. You guys remember the newspaper? And they'd be looking in the obituary column, like, Mr. Affinito, he passed away, he was 69.
Right.
He had a good life. And now today, no one expected people to live this long. And the challenge we have is, what do we do? And, I learned by osmosis. I did not have any help. I learned just by kind of doing. And I guess, I really don't know where to start, George. I mean, one of the challenges I faced, let's see, 2006, my dad had a car accident. He was pulling out of a transfer station.
Okay.
He ran a guy over on a motorcycle. Guy lost his leg. Sued my dad for millions of dollars. Okay. I don't think after that was over, we didn't think Dad should drive anymore. But he decided not to. And we said to my mom, we don't think you should drive anymore.
Right.
And in 2013, my mom got in a car accident, and there was a guy on a motorcycle, and the guy died. So I think one of the challenges we face today is, when do we ask our parents to stop driving? When do we say it's time?
That's always a difficult conversation to have with elders and seniors, mainly because, this generation, they're very proud people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They've accomplished a lot.
Independence. That was the big thing I was trying to sell. I started a company called On the Road Again, LLC. Go online, look at it. It was great. It was driving Miss Daisy service, elderly transportation. Unfortunately, the state of Connecticut allows Uber, so that whole thing is gone. But the whole idea was to have independence, dignity, pride, be on your own. So I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. It's an extremely difficult conversation to have, but it's something that must happen, not only for the safety of the person driving, but for the general safety of the public.
And there's more cars on the road today than there was years and years ago, and I just, I've had my friends with the same challenge. I said to my friend, your dad shouldn't be driving. You can't get out of the garage. You shouldn't be driving a lawnmower, for crying out loud. So how do you approach that? I mean, you're a senior living expert, so you have to you must deal with people that are dealing with this challenge every day.
Every day. And the adult children that come into, I'm a director over at a senior living community over in Stratford, and people come in and day out. And, it's, each case is unique, but the circumstances are not.
Yeah, they're always the same, right?
Always the
same. I think
same.
my situation is, that's what I admire about you, is you're dealing with people that think their situation is so unique, but in essence, you see the same thing all the time. All the time.
So in dealing with people who are driving, like I said, it's a very delicate subject. And what we tend to do is wean them off from driving and say, look, there's other options out there for people to be able to get their food, to get their meals. That's when we talk about, senior living, taking the keys and obviously taking over different aspects of what they've been doing.
So you slowly kind of move. I know that my situation with my parents, and eventually, yes, we had to take the car away from my mom because of the accident. But my situation was that they were living on their own, and I thought we were doing okay. And then my brothers and sisters came in one weekend, changed the locks on the house. Before I knew it, my parents were in one of the better assisted living facilities, which I won't mention on the air. And that was that. It kind of changed.
Yeah.
And my mother always said, I want to be in my house. I never want to leave. So, we weaned them off the driving. How do we wean them off getting them out of a house they've lived in for, God, my parents probably 50 years. My dad only lived in two places his whole life, where he grew up and where where he built his home. So how do you do that? I mean, what's the story with that? Because that's got to be difficult.
Well, each situation obviously is unique with this too as well. So people come into our assisted living and they've just had enough. They can't deal with the everyday struggle of maintaining a large home, a 4-bedroom home, and going up and down the stairs.
Right.
So it's the majority of the time, the people that come into the community know that it's time. There is a good portion of people that the way we typically do it is it's on a lease basis. It's a month-to-month basis. And we say, look, if you don't like it here.
And that's what my parents did, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't like it, you don't have to stay here and you get to go home. And I will tell you that the majority, if not 95% of the people who come into it, they find that they adapt and they find a way to not only survive, but thrive in that certain environment.
I went to visit my parents on Christmas at the assisted living they're at, It's kind of like, it's almost like a cruise ship. I mean, not for nothing, but
Yeah.
I went to the dining hall and, we had Christmas dinner there and it was very, very nice. And my mother can be difficult. She's not listening. Even when I was on the radio for 14 years and had a talk show, my mother didn't listen. But anyway, she loves the whole thing. They make her feel special. I've just called up and I don't feel like going to dining. So they're going to bring my breakfast to me in my room.
Well, that's because she is special and everyone there is special. And the key, just not for my assisted living community, but every single one, is to make the seniors feel special because they are.
And, our goal here, and people ask me why I'm doing this. And one of the things, we can get into scams and charity and all those other things. But what I've learned is, somebody's got to protect the rights of aging loved ones. They really do. And, what our goal is not to have seniors just live, but we want seniors to thrive. There's opportunity for seniors out there.
Without question. It really breaks my heart when I sit in front of a veteran who's fought in 2 wars and he has no idea that he can receive up to $2,800 per month that would be applied towards his monthly bills.
See, and that's one of the things that we can help with.
Absolutely.
And we're going to give most probably you guys a website to go to, maybe not today, but I'll talk to our producer who I'll make sure he tags at the end of the show where you can go and, kind of hook up with us, join our group, join our Facebook page, and we will do everything we can to help. And that's why we have George here. And George has contacts. We were just talking the other day. There's hundreds of people that you work with that are all connected to assisted living.
Without question. Even for the veterans out there, I work closely with Ann Janes. She is I'm going to say she's an advocate for the state of Connecticut for veterans. And she'll fight for your rights. And not only for your rights, but your spouse's rights, because not only are you eligible for benefits, but so is your spouse.
My dad, believe it or not, was a World War II pilot. He was in
Wow.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
there's fewer and fewer World War II veterans around. I'll say that much. So the other thing, George, I say it myself because, I teach college and I always say, oh my gosh, I'm slipping. I'm getting old. I'm forgetting things. You're an expert on Alzheimer's, dementia. So let's say you're a consultant on it. When I say an expert, but
I've worked in neurology for a long time.
Right.
Yes.
So what are some of the things that we should look for as our parents get older? I mean, I was finding the car keys in the refrigerator, so I was thinking maybe it's time that we got some help in the house. What's the process? What happens? What do we need to look for?
What people mostly don't understand is how prevalent this is in today's society. 1 in 8 people over 65 currently have Alzheimer's.
Let me stop you, though. It's more prevalent in today's society because people are living longer, correct?
Correct. I mean, nearly 50% of the people over 85 are suffering from Alzheimer's.
Okay, all right.
So, absolutely. But we're also finding, and I was just speaking with a neurologist just last week, we're finding that it's happening to people who are younger and younger now.
Now, is Alzheimer's the new, what we call senile? Or
Sort of. It's a form of dementia.
Okay.
But it accounts for 60 to 70% of the cases of dementia. So dementia has many different hats, and there is an umbrella of dementia, and Alzheimer's is just part of that, but it's the biggest part.
Okay, so what do I look for? You say over 65. I'm almost there. I mean, what do we look for? How do I identify what's going on, or what are some of the signs?
Changes in behavior patterns, forgetfulness,
Mm-hmm.
the inability to find that word. So they're always searching for that word, always. And that is usually the first key indicators of early onset dementia.
Is forgetfulness and always is trying to find the words? Or
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely.
is there any memory thing? Like they can remember something that happened 50 years ago, but they can't remember lunch. They
Yeah.
can't remember why they walked in the room.
Absolutely. Short-term memory loss. And one of the things that we do very successfully is integrate music into people.
And why is that? Now, I was reading about it. I found that interesting. Why is that?
Well, think
Wait,
about
you're
it.
a musician. I'm a musician. So why? Okay.
I mean, I can't remember what I had for breakfast today, but I could recite every lyric to Bon Jovi's "Slippery When Wet" LP from 19 whatever that was. So
Okay.
music has a certain way of connecting with people. So what we found is that utilizing music enables people to remember things in their past. People remember their favorite song. They remember the first song they kissed a boy or girl to.
Is there any kind of therapy? Is there anything that helps? I mean, I see commercials on TV all the time that say this can help with Alzheimer's. Is there any therapy?
There are medications that can't stop it. It's one of the worst progressive diseases out there.
Mm-hmm.
So medication can slow it down, but it's not going to stop it. And as far as some therapy, there's something that we've integrated, as well as many other senior living communities, is just doing mind games, keeping people sharp. We have a new program in which it's a card game where you would pull a card and say, tell me about the time where you got in trouble with the law, or tell me about a time with your favorite place you vacationed.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely, people start to remember things, and it actually begins a conversation, and things that you thought were long gone that they would never remember would bring up in a conversation.
It's funny. I think my dad is older and he remembers everything. And well, sometimes he'll say to me, how did you know what to do? How did you know how to do that? I said, because you taught me. I'm fixing the lawnmower won't start. And I'm checking the gas or the spark. And he said, how did you know what to do? And I said, well, you told me it's either the gas or the spark.
Right.
It's one of the two things. But he's good. He reads a lot. My dad reads a lot. He can quote Shakespeare. I mean, we watch Jeopardy and, you're in Greek philosophy and he's going, who is this? And I'm going, how the heck did you know that?
Right.
Now, what about, I mean, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but older people, especially I don't want to say who in my family, tend to get mean. I mean, is that something that we see, or is that just personality in general, or is that something that comes with getting old? Or
it happens from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
What we do is we just redirect, very much like a child. If someone who has early onset dementia and or Alzheimer's, you just redirect them. You don't correct them. You're not going to make them change their mind, but you just ask the question differently, or don't even ask a question, just make a statement and say, it's time for dinner. If you say, hey, would you like to go to dinner?
No, I don't want to go to dinner. I don't want to eat right now. And you just say,
you just redirect them. You take a step back. You come back and you say, you know what, Paul, it's time for dinner. Come on, let's go. And more often than not, they'll say, okay, let's go.
What is the biggest challenge that you find acclimating people to an assisted living? What maybe people have been in their house for 40, 50, 60 years, and all of a sudden you're bringing them into an assisted living environment. What's the biggest challenge? And I heard what you said, hey, if you don't like it, you can leave after a month. Try it for 30 days. That's what they kind of did with my parents and my mother. I just love this. I pick up the phone and they bring me my breakfast and lunch. So that's not how she talks. But what's the biggest challenge? What do you? Now you just told me, it's time for dinner. No, I don't want to go to dinner. I don't want to stay here. I mean, what's the biggest challenge that you find?
The biggest challenge is not with the residents. It's dealing with the different dynamics of the family members who come in. In big families, everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a different diagnosis, and everybody has an idea of what's best for their father or mother. So shuffling through that and dissecting it and getting everyone on the same page at times is very difficult.
And I found that with my family. I have a sister who lives in Canada, not involved with my parents at all, and a brother who lived in Washington State. Now, if you drew a line from where my parents lived to Washington State, you couldn't get a further straight line across North America, okay? So he's as far away as possible. And my sister is 600 and something miles away in Toronto. And she has power of attorney, which is basically useless down here when something's needed. So what they used to do is come in and do seagull visits. And if you know what a seagull visit is, a seagull comes down, swoops real low, poops on everything, and then takes off. And that's what they would do, is they would come down and they would have seagull visits and come in and just shake everything up. And they thought they knew best, but they weren't here. Now, do you get all of a sudden siblings and fighting with each other and a sibling just all of a sudden dropping in and then you're dealing with them saying, you were never here, you don't know what's going on? I mean, does that happen?
All the time. Like I said, that is really the most difficult part, is getting everyone on the same page, because specifically for the people who aren't there to see their mother and father decline, it usually happens around the holidays where someone would come home for Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter, and they'd say, geez, mom and pop just does not seem the same. It usually validates what the person or the adult child that's usually with their parents, it usually validates their feelings.
So in my situation, I found that they'd come in and everything's okay. They didn't want to be bothered with, did you notice this is going on? Did you notice that was going on?
On the surface, seems that everything seemed okay.
Right. And maybe for that 24 hours or the 48 hours they were visiting, everything seemed okay.
Yeah.
But in the long run, if they weren't there for the day-to-day, they don't know everything's okay.
Seniors are good at masking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they know what's going on. And more often than not, at times they don't want to leave their home. So they know that they'll put up a good front. We talk to doctors every day who say, this person seems to be doing extremely well.
They're doing extremely well today.
When you're seeing them. When they're home, they're not.
My mother was great at that. When she was home, everything was, she was the opposite. I think, no, when she's at the doctor's, everything okay. When she was home, everything was wrong. So we have the sibling thing, or we have the children thing. Then we have the parents or the people that are going into senior living fighting it. Are they fight it? Do they welcome it? What do you find most of the time? Are they a little bit hesitant? Are they a little bit just kind of cautious? What do you see?
Everyone's different.
Okay.
We have a fire chief. We have very proud people who've been in the military. People who ran battleships. People,
right.
Scientists. So
guys who flew planes in World War II.
So getting these people to realize that, this may be the best for you at this particular moment is a very difficult obstacle. I would say that's probably the hardest thing that we have to face.
How old is your oldest resident?
102.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good run. And are they still kind of with it?
Yeah, absolutely. What we find is that people who aren't particularly doing well in their home, in their own environment, they come into some sort of assisted living, and we provide them with 3 square meals. We provide them with medication management, and we provide them with socialization. And to me, that is the biggest component that can change anyone's life. If you're sitting in your house all by yourself and you're not really socializing with the outside world, you really need to do that. And what we see is an immediate change in behavior and as well as health.
For the better?
Much better.
So you're talking basically about single seniors, right?
We have many couples.
Okay, because my parents went together.
Yep.
And then, a friend of my parents went in, and he went with his, he calls her his lady friend, and they moved in together. And after a month, he said, I don't want to be here.
Right.
I want to get in my car. I want to go to the diner for breakfast. I want to eat something bad for lunch.
Yep.
He was 80-something years old, and he didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
So you find that it does happen.
We do. It seems to be a lot of times those are the people who are really independent and they can function on their own. And if it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. It definitely is not. And what I see though, George, this happens so quickly. So I just told you about this guy. We'll call him John. And John wants to get in his own car, and he wants to go to breakfast, he wants to go to diner, he wants to meet his buddies for lunch. And then a year later, John's old. Do you notice how quickly people, is that something that happens? I mean, my dad still doesn't appear old to me. He hasn't gotten old.
Right.
But I see some people that just age. One year they're fine, the next year
happens quickly.
It's a switch.
It does. But realistically, it's a gradual decline that you or other people are not noticing.
Now, the cost, you say that you can get benefits from the veterans to go into assisted living, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how come we don't know about that?
Well, because there really isn't a lot of people promoting that. Like I said, there's a woman out of Milford, Connecticut, and there's people all over the country, actually, just not Connecticut, who are advocates for veterans who actually work for the state of Connecticut, providing people with information in regards to their benefits. Having Ann James here from the state of Connecticut, to talk about things like that, offering information to seniors.
Well, what we're going to try to do is kind of do what I teach, and that's inverted pyramid style of things, is kind of load everything up on top and then make sure we can find the information that filters through that people need.
Correct.
That's what, I want to kind of funnel the information that people need because I've been through it. You've had a ton of experience in it. You're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. And like you said, everybody feels that their situation is so unique, but to you, it really isn't that unique because you've dealt with so many of these different situations.
Absolutely.
Over and over again.
The first part of going into any rehab facility and or assisted living is an assessment where they sit down with your mom and dad, and we give a series of tests. And people are amazed that sometimes their parents aren't really doing that well cognitively when they firmly believe that they're doing okay. But when you give them this test and this assessment, you say, okay, well, here's where they're at. They're at this level. Sometimes it's shocking to the family members.
So there's two things. There's assisted living and there's rehab.
Correct.
So I've had to deal with both, with my mom being in a serious car accident, with my dad having surgery at 96 years old. Please don't think I'm being a wise guy, but, I go into some of these rehab centers and there's different floors. First floor is this, second floor is this, third floor, nobody's coming home. So that's not what you're about. You're about assisted living, or do you have rehab in your facilities?
We do have rehab and on-site rehab, and most assisted livings do.
Okay.
Yeah, so we certainly, we rehab is a very big part of assisted living. We even have people who stay for respites who are getting an operation and they need 4 to 8 weeks off from their home and they're recuperating from some sort of surgery. They come and they stay with us while they get their rehab right at the facility.
And do they stay afterwards?
Some do, some don't. Because we've been finding that even some of the 55 to 60-year-old people who are not ready for assisted living.
No, I am not ready for assisted living.
But you might be ready for a break for 4 weeks of just to have someone cook and clean for you for 4 weeks while you recuperate from knee surgery or anything like that.
Oh, so I mean, I guess you're right. I guess you're right. I'm so independent that even when I had I had to recover from something for 2 months, I still couldn't. I had to get up and do it.
Absolutely.
I'm not one who likes to get waited on. So, and my mom wasn't really one of those moms who was kind of the Mrs. Cleaver kind of thing. She was always involved in charities. She worked for a museum. She was a curator, traveled in the summertime with my sister a lot. So I didn't grow up like that. So even when I was rehabbing myself, I was always kind of getting up and doing things myself.
Right.
But you do have, so what's the youngest you'd get somebody in rehab? What's the ages?
Oof, we've had people at 40 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, who come and stay for a while, and then we've had we even have somebody who's diagnosed at the age of 65 with full onset Alzheimer's.
So, we're not doctors, obviously, but the cause of Alzheimer's is it? Do you know what causes it, or why all of a sudden is it so? I'm not so in the news. It's so top of mind. Alzheimer's, everybody, So ages from, what did you say your youngest was what?
Pardon me?
Youngest rehab person?
Oh, yeah. We've had people after surgery. We have people who are 47 years old.
Okay.
And then we've had people who were 90 years old come in first after surgery.
My dad basically was in there after he had colon cancer, and they did surgery on him at 97.
Yep.
And I actually said to the doctor, I said, he's got colon cancer. He goes, well, it's going to kill him. And I said, how many years? He said, it'll probably kill him in like 5 or 6 years. It'll be 102. So, but they felt, the quality of life would be better. To be honest with you, the surgery almost killed him because any surgery is traumatic, especially for someone that age. In old bodies, I have my brother's third wife is a doctor. Probably going to be his third ex. But anyway, she says that old people are unforgiving. Their bodies are unforgiving. So it's difficult to do traumatic surgery on them and expect them to recover as quickly as everybody. You do rehab, so what do you do for fun? That's the big question. Assisted living, what am I going to do for fun? Am I going to sit around and watch TV? Because I can do that at home all day long. I mean, that's all my parents used to do. They had the big screen. It was blaring because they couldn't hear. They couldn't find the hearing aid. So assisted living, how's that going to help me socially?
We are a social model where I work. So what we do is it's important to get people out of their rooms and moving. And we do a lot of different brain activities. We do a lot of physical activities. Now, in dealing with this age demographic, we're not going to be out there doing Rocky Balboa's, a workout from Rocky IV. But we do a lot of different we'll say, a lot of different physical activities that get people up and moving.
So aerobics, old aerobics, what do you do?
We've done
aerobics?
We've done yoga. We've done aerobics. For people in wheelchairs, we do balloon volleyball. We do a lot of different things that get people moving. So we even have, we have dances. We have
No, really?
Yeah, we do. We do.
Is there any dating that goes on in assisted living?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Is anybody like... All right, so listen, this is great. We got to wrap it up. I mean, some of the things we want to talk about later on in our next show is going to be, what to look out for. Some of the scams that are out there that are after the elderly. I know my mom's been a victim of that. Some online things that are going on, some credit card things. Estate planners, be careful. Watch out for family members too. When is it time to get some help at home? When is it time, again, we'll talk about assisted living, some other places they could live, and just looking out in general for signs of vulnerability that you may see your parents being exposed to.
Absolutely.
I'm with George Dewey. I'm Paul Cassella. We are both aging adult advocates. We do this because we're concerned about seniors. We want to take the senior out of senior living. And our goal is not to have seniors just live. Our goal is to have seniors thrive. We'll see you on our next show. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
The preceding program has been a presentation of Elder Lives Matter Society, LLC. For more information, check out ELMS on Facebook. I'm Dan Barnes, executive producer, and you've been listening to the ELMS podcast. Thanks for tuning in.